Today I've got the new Jetbeam RRT01 2020 edition. If you remember my reviews from last year, I had this, the RRT01, but from 2019. Both lights are similar, but the RRT01 2020 edition changes up a few things by adding a Nichia emitter and a tail switch at the back in addition to this control ring. It also has the ability to add extensions here at the front to make it compatible with different battery sizes. Thanks to Jetbeam for sending this to me to look at and review. Now let's get into the review. Guys, if you're not following me on Instagram or Facebook, I'd appreciate that. Your support there really does help me continue to bring reviews like this to you. And while you're here on YouTube, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe so you're notified of all my reviews in the future. There are now 3 versions of the Jetbeam RRT01 that all share the same name. This is the original from about 8 years ago, which I don't have here, the 2019 version, which I have here on top, and then the 2020 version that is on bottom. Each have their own difference in performance, batteries, and LED. I do wish Jetbeam would have added a V1, V2, V3, or use a different name for each light so it was easier for consumers to tell the difference. The easiest way to tell the difference between the 2019 and 2020 is to look at the tail. The 2019 I have here on the right and the 2020 I have on the left. And you can see the 2020 has spot for 3 tritium vials, and then the 2020 edition has a button here with this like halo protecting it. Here is the packaging that the Jetbeam RRT01 Raptor comes in. This is the 2020 light. You can tell the light Lumens is a little bit upgraded as well. See, it's IPX8 water rated, it's stepless, and it includes a 18350 battery, but it's compatible with CR123s or RCR123s too. On the back, you've got the features and the specifications, all pretty standard stuff here in a nice retail box. The light itself comes with some accessories. You've got a Jetbeam branded lanyard here. You've got a bag of extras with 3 extra O-rings, an extra button that happens to be gray. The one that was installed on mine was black. You get some extra screws and then a little Allen wrench for the clip removal. And then optionally, you get these 2 extensions. And this allows you to run 18500 and 18650 batteries in your light. And these do fit the 2019 version of the light as well. The light also ships with that 18350 battery, as mentioned, with micro USB charging on it. The RRT01 Raptor is made from aluminum and is anodized in a light gray with a control ring being in the silver bezel. It's a warmer gray than what the 2019 light was, and I quite like it. Machine here is very good, and starting at the tail, there's that bezel around that center button. It does have some holes in there to add a lanyard or just for style points. The mechanical button here does have a nice texture, and it's thought of and designed well here. And I say that because when it's off, the light doesn't tail stand the best, but when you're actually going to tail stand the light when the light is off, probably not very often. When you turn it on, and I've got the control ring all the way down here, the light tail stands quite well. It's not 100% solid, but mostly solid there when that button is pushed in, so that's kind of nice. It is one piece with the body there. You've got the clip here. This is a standard steel flame pattern clip, so clips from other brands' lights, Overready, steel flame, whoever, should fit here. One thing to note here is the screws are hex instead of Torx, which is found on many other lights. It's a fairly long clip, but pretty good for deep carry. You've got some textured anodized in here. You've got a couple of flats milled in, and branding's very minimal here. You just got the Jetbeam logo on one side, and then you've got the RRT01 Raptor on here with the Rapid Response Tactical Series light and your serial number. Up more towards the front, you've got the control ring here. Threads on the inside here are square cut and non-anodized. By default, the light will fit 18350 batteries, CR123s, and RCR123s, which I find is a great size for EDC. If you want, you can add on these extensions here and run your 18650 batteries. Just remember to use a protected battery, as the light itself does not have low voltage protection. When the extensions are in place, I find it's a little bit less elegant, but still carries well, is a little bit more top heavy. The rotary control ring here has some grooves milled into it to give it grip. It does not have detent on the control area. From 0 to 100% output is about 160 degrees of rotation, and there's no detents in this model. The ring moves pretty easily, and I'd like just a touch more resistance. The 2019 version here had that, and I think it worked just a little bit better. The head itself here has a pretty flat bezel. You've got the anti-reflective coated glass, and then that reflector inside has a light orange peel around it, and in the center there you can see the Nichia LED in my model here. I measured the overall length at 91 millimeters in its shortest configuration. Each extension adds 15 millimeters to the overall length of the light. Maximum diameter on the head is 26 millimeters and minimum diameter on the body is 24.5. The extensions are slightly larger in diameter, coming in at 26.46 versus 26 of the head of the light, and you can put those extensions on the last year's model as well. Weight in the shortest configuration with the included battery is 114.6 grams. With a Samsung 30Q and those two extensions, it came in at 153.9 grams. The most obvious comparison would be here the light from 2019. You can see overall the 2019 light is shorter, and I think that's due to mainly the tail button here. It just takes up more room to have that switch and spring in there. The lenses are a little bit different here. The 2019 version has the bezel that's a little bit crenulated and tactical. It'll focus here. And the 2020 version is smooth. Honestly, for EDC, either work perfectly well. I don't see a whole lot of difference here, whatever is your preference. As mentioned, the extension tubes fit either light, so you can buy those extension tubes and fit them on your 2019 version if you have it too. They just won't match in color completely. On the RRT01, like its predecessor, is great. It's using that standard steel flame clip pattern, as I mentioned before. The screws though are hex. The stock clip is a little bit longer than Benny at 61 millimeters. In the pocket it carries reasonably well. That slotted tail bezel around the tail sticks up a little bit more than I want to, but it doesn't cause any problems, and it protects that button from being pressed. It's a mechanical button and takes a pretty strong press, so I don't think this light will come on in your pocket. There are two LEDs being offered for the RRT01 2020 edition. There is a CRI XP G3 LED or a Nichia 219C LED, and both are pretty good options. The CRI is about 80 CRI, and usually CRI G3s for me have some green tint to them. So I went for the Nichia 219C LED at 90 CRI, and that's my strong preference here. It produces a nice about 4,000 Kelvin tint and a nice slightly warm neutral white. For me, this is about perfect, and Jetbeam claims both are rated for 950 lumens. I wouldn't quite expect that out of a Nichia 219C. I'd expect it to be a little bit lower than the CRI option, but I don't have the equipment to accurately test that number and give you my thoughts there. The beam here is nice for EDC. It's got some spot to it, as we can see here. The beam here is great for EDC. You can see it's got some center spot there and a little bit of spill to it. It gives you enough throw. Jetbeam says 220 meters. I am not quite sure about that, but it's plenty for EDC, especially with that 18650 battery here. It's a great overall light. Here are my night shots for the Jetbeam RRT01. This is the 2020 model with the Nichia 219C emitter. And I've got it set here on fairly low. It is infinitely variable, so I can bring it up in a nice smooth sweeping fashion up to top 950 lumens. But let's swing out and see what this looks like in my normal setting here out on my deck. We can see it hits my fence at 45 feet, no problem. It hits the neighbor's fence there at about 100, no issues. And we can even see the outlines of the trees there across the way. So overall, for an EDC light, super useful. And we can come down, kind of see the shape of the beam on this tree here. We've got a nice large central spot. We do have some spill. It's not making it there, but you can kind of see it on the fence and stuff below there. Overall, really nice beam here for EDC. It is warmer white, which I really like. No complaints there at all. This does have special modes. If I go up twice, we get strobe, and that is infinitely variable, so I can have it be lower power strobe if you want to. If I do that 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, we get SOS, and that is infinitely variable as well. So the light I want to compare this to is the 2019 version of this light. This is that cool white emitter, and this is full power. We can see it reaches those trees, but just barely. The big difference here is such a cool white beam here. If I point it up at the tree, we can see also similar beam shape, not too bad. Just look at the tint difference here in the 2020 model. So much warmer, high CRI. Such a better beam, in my opinion, than we've got here with the 2019 version in that cool white emitter. If you do like cool white, you can pick that CRI XP G3 emitter for the 2020 version, and you get all the same features here. So again, here is the 2019 RRT01 and the 2020 RRT01. Runtime here is very linear. I started off my test with that included 1100 milliamp hour 18350 battery on full power. Output here was very linear and it seemed to not be regulated super well. There isn't really much of a step down. The light ran above 40% relative output for around 28 minutes. At 34 minutes, the light shut off when the low voltage protection kicked in on the battery at 2.94 volts. The runtime here surprised me a little bit. It's kind of short, but then again, this light doesn't have much of a step down. It does get warm, and the highest temp I saw was 59C at the 17-minute mark. I put on the extension tubes here and ran this with a Samsung 30Q 3000 milliamp hour 18650 battery, and that was a mistake. The reason why, that wasn't a protected battery. And when I did this my first time, the light ran until the cell was dangerously low at 1 volt, basically trashing the cell. Yes, I can charge it up and still use it, but that's not the safest thing to do. I'm not happy about that. FL1 was at 95 minutes using that battery, and it shut off at 1 hour and 40 minutes. And you can see the thermal regulation kick in on the top end of the graph here. UI is super straightforward, and it's got that rotary, which I really enjoy. The RRT01 2020 version adds that on and off switch at the tail, and then you've got the rotary to control brightness. The light can be on like it is now, and you can see it take a little bit of time to turn and then before it turned on, and you can go all the way up. You can also run that LED at incredibly low power or off before the light will actually turn on when you increase that power. You do have a couple special modes here, and to access them you go all the way up to top power and do 2 backwards and forwards like that, and you get strobe. And then you've got variable output strobe, so you can go all the full 950 lumens or come down all the way to run just a few. The other thing you've got is your SOS, and to do that you go up and down 3 times, so 1, 2, 3 in quick succession, and then you've got your SOS, and this is also variable. So recharging, the light does have that included 1100 milliamp hour Jetbeam branded 18350 battery, and just wants to roll off my table. It's got that micro USB plug on board on the side of the battery. It's got that multicolored LED on top that goes red when charging and green when charged, and low voltage protection is built into the battery. But it stopped at 2.94 volts. Charged, it stopped at 4.16. When I plugged it into charge, I did notice the top of the cell got pretty warm, about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, but quickly dissipated. My guess is it's doing this at first to gradually limit the current that's going into the battery and using that heat as resistance. Overall, the battery took 92 minutes to charge, and maximum charge rate I saw was around 70-minute mark at 1 amp. It's a little odd to see that higher charge rate at the end of the charge cycle. So for me, the pros are that Nichia LED. My biggest complaint with the 2019 version of this light was the LED in use. I'm a sucker for a rotary interface here. It works well, but requires shifting your grip to turn the light on and then adjust the output. I like the anodizing color here. It's that warm gray, almost sandy color. It's a nice overall EDC light, and I like that it has the ability to run 18650s too. The cons for me are there's no low voltage protection. You must use protected cells if you plan to run the battery to exhaustion. It's a little awkward with the extension tubes installed. It stalls, it throws the balance way forward, and it's confusing naming system with the previous versions of the light, and it's a little bit on the expensive side with those extensions included. The Jetbeam RRT01 is the 3rd iteration of the light that shares the same name. While confusing for customers, it's a light I'm really enjoying. I really like rotary interfaces, and I think they should be done in more flashlights as it's intuitive and easy to operate for people of any age. The addition here of that on-off button on the tail works pretty well instead of detents, but I feel like the detents are the more obvious solution, and I've never had them come on in my pocket or anything like that. That said, the tail switch here works well. It just requires you to change grips on the light when you go to turn it on and then want to adjust grips. The inclusion of these extensions, I think, were smart, and it allows you to run off more common batteries. CR123s aren't my favorite, so I'm glad it fits 18650s and 18350s. I'll run this with 18350s most of the time, like it came from the factory, but the extensions are a nice touch. Just be sure if you're going to use an 18650 that you have something like this Panasonic NCR 18650B that has protection. But for me, the optional Nichia 219C emitter here is perfect. One of the features I liked least about the old version was was that it was cool white only. It's great to see Jetbeam listen to user feedback like myself and others had and put out with a different LED. Overall, this is a fun EDC light. It's a little on the expensive side, but one I can still recommend. Make sure to check my links in the description as I'll list any coupons or sales that I have from vendors, and we will catch you on the next review. Thanks for watching.